All right, let's dive right into this explainer and completely reframe how we think about human intuition. For centuries, we've basically been told that to make a smart, objective decision, we have to completely strip away our emotions, right? We're taught that pure, cold logic is the ultimate gold standard of intelligence, while gut feelings are just this mystical, unscientific mumbo-jumbo that distracts us. But what if that entire premise is biologically backwards? What if your gut feeling isn't a distraction from making a clear decision, but the literal biological mechanism that makes a clear decision possible in the first place?
To understand this, we're going to start with an incredible historical anomaly. It's a moment where a single man had mere minutes to decide if a nuclear attack was real, and he ultimately saved the entire world. Picture this. It's just past midnight on September 26, 1983. Cold War tensions are at an absolute boiling point. Lieutenant Colonel Stanislav Petrov is the duty officer in a Soviet nuclear early warning bunker. Out of nowhere, the alarms start blaring. Soviet satellites are detecting 5 U.S. ballistic missiles heading directly for the USSR. The screen is flashing launch. Millions of lives are quite literally hanging in the balance, and Petrov has just minutes to make the call: retaliate and kick off World War III, or dismiss this multi-million-dollar, state-of-the-art satellite system as a false alarm.
So what did he do? He chose not to launch. And here's the crazy part. When he was asked later why he ignored the terrifying hard data flashing right in his face, Petrov cited an unspecified physical sensation. He couldn't actually prove the system was wrong in that exact moment, but the fact that it was only 5 missiles just felt off. He ultimately based his choice to save humanity on, quote, a funny feeling in my gut, which really makes you stop and wonder, right? How does our biology actually process that level of immense risk? How did his body know what his conscious mind couldn't logically prove yet? Well, here is our roadmap for today's explainer to dissect exactly that. We'll cover 1. The nuclear false alarm. 2. The enteric nervous system. 3. The somatic marker hypothesis. 4. The Iowa gambling task. And 5. Intuition in high-stakes fields. Moving to section 2, the enteric nervous system, or the biology of the second brain. 100 million. That is a staggering number, and it's exactly how many neurons are packed right now inside your gut. It's an incredibly dense, mesh-like network of neural tissue lining your gastrointestinal tract. Scientists like Dr. Michael Gershon often refer to this entire network as the enteric nervous system, or quite literally, your second brain. And this system is so wildly complex that it can actually operate totally autonomously from the brain in your head, while also communicating with it nonstop. It's doing way more than just digesting your lunch. It is a massive, highly sensitive sensory array. And this communication isn't just a one-way street. There is a continuous, bi-directional communication loop firing constantly between your head and your gastrointestinal tract. Think about it. When you feel butterflies because you're nervous before a big presentation, that is your brain's mental state physically altering your gut. But it works the other way around, too. The physical state of your gut is constantly sending these incredibly powerful signals upward, heavily influencing your emotional and cognitive state. So how is all this data actually moving? The main channel for this transfer is the vagus nerve. Think of it as a biological broadband highway. It carries massive amounts of sensory data upwards before you even register a conscious thought. Deep in your gut lining, you have these special sensors called enteroendocrine cells, picking up on what's happening. They connect to neuropod cells, which shoot those signals straight up the vagus nerve to your brainstem. It's a lightning-fast connection, gathering interceptive data, which is basically the sense of your body's internal state, and delivering it right to your brain's processing centers. Section 3. The somatic marker hypothesis. We're deconstructing the rational and emotional binary. This hypothesis completely shatters that old, false dichotomy between cold rationality and warm emotion. It essentially proves that having an emotional response is a physical prerequisite for making a logical choice. Neuroscientist Antonio Damasio actually studied patients who had perfect logic, high intelligence, but because of specific damage to their frontal lobes, their brains couldn't process emotions anymore. And the result? These people couldn't make even the simplest choices, like picking a time for an appointment. They would just endlessly weigh the pros and cons until they were completely paralyzed. Damasio realized that our past experiences leave somatic markers, literal bodily feelings of approach or avoidance, that quickly eliminate the bad options so our logical brain can actually step in and function. Now, here's where it gets really mind-blowing. Your brain basically acts like a predictive supercomputer. With enough life experience, it bypasses the physical stomach entirely to run lightning-fast simulations in what's called the as-if loop. Early on, when you're first learning something, the brain uses the body loop. It literally changes your heart rate or tightens up your gut and then reads that physical shift. It's a slower, raw response. But as you become an expert, your brain switches to the as-if loop. It just simulates the feeling internally, predicting what your body would do without waiting for that slow, physical round trip to the stomach and back. This is exactly how an expert can get an incredibly accurate gut read on a situation in just milliseconds.
Moving to Section 4, the Iowa gambling task, let's look at how we can actually visualize the data of intuition. To see this in action, researchers tested risk evaluation using a really clever lab setup called the Iowa gambling task. Players sit down in front of 4 decks of cards with completely hidden rules, and they have to figure out the winning strategy through painful trial and error. Decks A and B look amazing at first, huge payouts, but hidden inside those decks are absolutely massive, ruinous penalties. Decks C and D, on the other hand, are totally boring, modest rewards, but the penalties are tiny, which means they are the only actual way to win in the long term. And the data that came out of this is absolutely wild. Researchers hooked these players up to skin sensors, basically a lie detector, to measure their sweat. After just a few bad losses, long before the player consciously realized which decks were the bad ones, their bodies began to sweat. It's called an anticipatory skin conductance response. The exact second their hand hovered over the dangerous decks A or B, their body sounded the alarm. The gut quite literally knew the math and the risk long before the conscious brain could articulate it. Section 5. Intuition in high-stakes fields. Let's see how this biological hardware translates to actual, real-world performance. So professionals who absolutely excel in chaotic, high-stress environments tend to possess very high interoceptive awareness. This means they can consciously leverage their body's underlying calculation engine because, it's not enough to just have a gut feeling. You have to be able to hear that signal through all the noise. Interoception is that crucial internal listening skill. It's your ability to feel your own heartbeat, notice that subtle tightening in your chest, or that sudden drop in your stomach, and actually recognize that your body is delivering highly compressed, super valuable data. Scientists actually break this awareness down into 3 measurable dimensions to see how well someone translates their gut feelings into actionable intelligence. First, there's the objective side. Can you accurately count your own heartbeats without checking your pulse? Then there's the subjective side. How deeply do you generally feel your everyday bodily sensations? And finally, the metacognitive side. Do you actually know when your gut feelings are dead-on accurate versus when they're just noise from being tired or anxious? People with high metacognitive insight are the ones who can truly weaponize their intuition. A perfect example of this is financial traders. Studies prove that traders who can accurately read their gut feelings make significantly better decisions in time-constrained, highly complex markets. Think about the trading floor. The data is completely overwhelming, the clock is ticking, and the stakes are enormous. Well, traders who score highly on those heartbeat detection tasks literally make more money and survive much longer in the industry. Their brains are rapidly firing that as-if loop, processing millions of subtle market patterns and delivering the final verdict as a physical sensation right in their chest or gut. When time is incredibly short and the variables are just completely overwhelming, entrusting your gut isn't just taking a wild guess. It's actually often a vastly superior strategy to overanalyzing every little feature. Research shows that if you give people a highly complex choice, like, say, buying a car with dozens of conflicting variables, those who rely on a purely rational, feature-based strategy usually get totally paralyzed or make suboptimal choices. But people who engage a feeling-based strategy, tapping into those somatic markers, consistently yield a higher quality choice. It is the exact same biological mechanism that kept our ancestors alive when they had to make split-second decisions about a predator. Which leaves us with a pretty massive, provocative thought for today. The next time you face a truly high-stakes choice, will you have the disciplined awareness to listen to what your biology already knows? We've built this modern culture that constantly tells us to ignore our bodies and blindly trust the spreadsheet. But as we've seen from Cold War bunkers to Wall Street trading floors, your gut isn't acting irrationally at all. It is doing math so incredibly advanced and so fast that your conscious mind simply hasn't caught up to it yet. So I'll leave you with this. The question really isn't whether you should listen to your gut, but whether you can afford not to.